much. CBIC is the Charlottesville Business Innovation Council. We've been doing this CE2 event. That's what we call it for short, Charlottesville Entrepreneurs and Espresso, CE2, in collaboration with our co-hosts, and hope we'll see more about them. We've got the Community Investment Collaborative, the iLab at UV, and the Batten Institute, and the Central Virginia Small Business Development Center. And we've been doing this again for, 5 or 6 years now. Philip Summer helped us kick this off. He's here on the call as well. And I really want to thank Hope for being our volunteer within CBIC, who helps us manage a lot of the logistics for this. Specifically, she helps us source and vet the speakers, and we have awesome speakers every single event. They're always unique. There's something for everybody in these. It's a great opportunity for us to get together as entrepreneurs and startup companies and consultants and advisors. It's where a lot of actual connections get made. One of the things that's unique, and I wanted to tell you about with this particular format that we're using, again, this is of course the first time we've done our virtual CE2. So this tool that we're using, while it does look like Zoom, you can move your window around and you'll see a browser behind you, the cbic.kikochat.com browser. And those rooms, those are all separate rooms. Right now, we're all in the main meeting space. When the speakers are done speaking, we're going to actually use these rooms that are sponsored by the iLab at UVA and the Batten Institute, and we're going to jump into whichever room calls to us. So if you have a comment you didn't get to make to Megan and you really want to speak to Megan, then you'll jump over to the makerspace and you'll meet with Megan. And there'll be other people and they're chatting with her as well. Same thing for Chad. He's going to be in the Idea Well, and you'll jump over there and talk to him as a crash and learn presenter. And then we have, if you have any questions about the CARES Act, we have Gary here from the SBDC, Central Virginia SBDC, on hand to talk to you about CARES Act questions. And then we have other gardens that you can jump into, and Hope will go over the logistics with you again. But what I wanted to tell you is that KikoChat is a tech startup company that started out of Charlottesville about 3 years ago. And the founder, named Lucas, and his wife and their 2 children moved to New York to be closer to family. So back in 2017, Lucas was trying to get me to use this for purposes for just like this, but it was a little bit before its time. So I was really glad that we were able to reconnect with Lucas and find this technology and bring it to you guys so that you'll experience it in a little while, and you'll see how and why it's so unique. But every event that I've done using this platform, several people within the group have said, oh my God, like I've never seen this technology anywhere else, and I want to use it for my company meetings. I want to use it for my thises and my that's. So it is a startup company, and we do encourage you to utilize it if it's something that's useful for you, for any of your purposes. I am happy to put you in touch directly with the co-founder of the company, or the founder of the company, Lucas. All right, Hope, we celebrate, we educate, and we advocate at CBIC, and this is part of what we do, making all of those things happen. And I'm going to turn it back over to you because we got a lot of content to get through.
We do, yep. And as Tracy said, I want to thank our hosts, CIC, Community Investment Collaborative, CBIC, Charlottesville Business Innovation Council, the SBDC Small Business Development Center, the Batten Institute, iLab, and CBIC Trip. So to jump in, I wanted to, and we'll get hear from all of them later, but I wanted to start with our early stage speaker. I wanted to introduce Megan Thomas with Crescent Simples. And she has got a really cool story. She actually was a bartender in New Orleans and came to Charlottesville because, of course, her family was here and UVA is here, and why don't you want to be in Charlottesville? So she and her husband Bill relocated here and started this company. And she is in an interesting place with it. Obviously, with the environment right now, there's been impact, and she's figuring out how to navigate that. I would love feedback from you all. So please help me welcome Megan Thomas.
Thank you, Hope. All right, so like Hope said, I'm Megan Thomas. I own Crescent Simples. We're a small batch, fresh fruit and herb, raw sugar, and no preservative simple syrup company. So if you're not familiar with the cocktail space, a lot of what is available right now is mostly made from natural flavoring, or sometimes it is made from fresh fruit and herbs, but it does have preservatives in it. And the reason that we are different is, again, we don't use any of these natural flavorings. It's all fresh every time. And also, we are able to not use preservatives in our product because we use only fruit that has high acidity, which acts as a preservative itself. And we are able to get the acid naturally high enough in our product that it is completely shelf stable, which means that we don't have to have a best by date on our product. You can have it on your shelf for a year or more and it will still be good when you open it up. And to touch on the natural flavoring, there's not a definition of what natural means when you have it on a label. And so if you've done some research into it, I've done some research into it. Natural flavoring can kind of be anything that comes from an animal or plant product. And so there can be a lot of added chemicals in that. And so we believe in just having exactly what we say is on the label in our bottle. So you'll see like on our bottles, just strawberry, basil, raw sugar, and water. And those are our only ingredients. So like Hope said, I started out as a bartender in New Orleans. I eventually moved my way into the general manager position at the restaurant that I worked for. And that was both a distillery and a restaurant combination. So I have a history in working with alcoholic beverages. And while I was working there, one of the bartenders on my team entered a competition to make the best cocktail in New Orleans. And she entered a strawberry basil gin smash. So she needed to use fresh strawberry and fresh basil in that drink. And she got far enough into the competition where she had to make 400 of those, which obviously muddling 400 drinks in a competition is difficult. You'd need a lot of manpower for that. So we decided to look for a syrup on the market that would mimic that flavor. And everything that we found through the distributors really didn't taste like fresh strawberries or fresh basil to us. And we spent a lot of time on trying to make it ourselves and found that for the mouthfeel and the flavor that we were getting back, it really wasn't worth the amount of effort that we were putting into it. So that was when I first had the thought of why isn't someone doing a better product, both to serve bars and restaurants and for people to use at home, seeing as the canned cocktail scene is really growing. There's a lot of people trying to make craft cocktails in their home. But it was actually a few months after that that we ended up starting our company. So I injured my back when I was working in New Orleans, and we decided to move to Charlottesville to be closer to UVA and closer to family. And I grew up here, so I really do enjoy the area. And Charlottesville is an incredible incubator for businesses because there are so many resources available to entrepreneurs. And also specifically for food and beverage businesses, there are many bars and restaurants here, and the outdoor market is actually the largest outdoor market in the state of Virginia. So it's a really great place to experiment with a new product and see if you have a good customer base for it. So we drew on that idea that we'd had in New Orleans that this would be a good product, and we started selling it at the market in July of last year. And we started seeing regulars come, people who are very interested in getting seasonal product from us, and our customer base continued to grow. So we decided in November to seek out the Virginia Department of Agriculture's approval for our product. We got it tested and it passed. And we began working through a commercial kitchen, which is the cannery in Farmville. And there we were able to produce in a larger scale and start selling to stores and bars and restaurants in the area. So prior to this situation where most of the small stores and bars and restaurants are obviously closed to the public right now, we were in 15 local stores and 8 local bars and restaurants. So you might have seen our things in like Common House. I know a lot of you frequent there. They both sell our product and will have it on the menu when their rooftop bar opens up once all of this is over. And we're also on the menu at Tillman's, and they sell our products there and some other places in town. So I felt like we were having a lot of success. We got a lot of positive feedback from people who were using our product. But we did have a few bumps in the road along the way. So one of the things that we've encountered with cocktail products is that there's a perception around what can be found in mainstream grocery stores and ABC stores. So you might be familiar with things like the Zing Zang margarita mix and those types of products that you can find in larger stores. And most adults that I know don't want to use those products. They're a lot more open to using the small batch products, but if you're sold in a larger store, you sometimes get this perception of not being small batch anymore. And the other thing is you have to spend a lot of time on customer education on how to use it. So we are at a crossroads as a company, and that's where my ask comes in. We are trying to decide between going with a distributor and possibly losing some of that consumer perception of having a small batch company where people know what's in the bottle and people think that we are, a very craft cocktail product, or deciding to stay local for a while, continuing to push ourselves for being picked up in bars and restaurants and smaller stores and allowing it to grow that way naturally for a while and allow our reputation to build that way before we go with a distributor. So my ask would be, if anyone has had experience either going with a distributor or growing locally, what their experience has been, what their takeaways are, what the positives or negatives have been, and sort of any advice you would give to a company that's at this point.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan. So did a great job. And basically she is asking for advice, experience, growing organically, growing locally versus following the distributorship route. And so wanted to open the floor to any of you. And I guess we can, I'll look for hands raised and then I'll call on you and you can share any feedback for Megan. So I'm going to open the floor.
Oh, come on, people. You have advice for her.
It usually takes them a second and then they
Yeah.
I'm not finding the hands raised.
Go ahead and speak. Go ahead.
Yeah, speak up.
Hi, Meg. This is Bridget from Catbird. We're actually members of CWIF together, and I've been following the growth of your product. I'm in the food business. I'm a veteran. And I also have a small product company. I think you're doing a great job, and at this point, I don't feel that going with a distributor would at all dilute the craft image of your brand. I think it's a matter of finding the correct distributor. And I think that I'm not a person to advise you on that, but I think there are people in our women's organization, other organizations who could advise you on that, because I think the quality of the distributor and the aim of the distributor is going to define how your product enters the market in other areas. It's unfortunate that the Virginia Food Expo was canceled this year. I suspect that you were registered to be a presenter there, or at least have a booth. But I would perhaps start with VDAX, with their marketing department. I can't remember the name of the new lady there, but apparently she's very active in marketing circuits, and she might have some suggestions for you on that. But again, I don't feel that going with a distributor would, and again, distributors don't market your product, they're simply distributing it. But if they're distributing to the types of stores where you want to be found, you'll still be able to retain your profile as a craft producer. I hope that's helpful. But again, I think you're doing a great job. I love all of your social media marketing. I think you're doing a fantastic job.
Thank you, Bridget. It's great to hear from you at Catbird. I'm very familiar with your product, so it's great to hear from someone else who has started a local food product.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Who else has some guidance or advice or anything like that for
Megan, do you have your product that you can show us? Let us see your branding.
Sure, give me just a moment.
Yeah. Philip, from your days back with the iLab at UVA, do you have any feedback for her? And maybe one of the things I was thinking about was very nice.
Yeah, it's difficult to see here, but we are actually going through a small label redesign. The background will remain the same, but the actual center of the label is going to change.
Megan, did you tell the flavors? I can't remember.
Yeah, so we have grapefruit rosemary, blackberry vanilla, blueberry lavender, and strawberry basil. Lime jalapeno is about to come out for our spring flavor. And we have a couple of different flavors, lemon chamomile and orange spice, that are available at the market only. We like to just have like small batch things available there.
Megan, question for you. Where am I? Oh, Philippe is gone. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Philip.
So we've had a number of food companies go through the iLab. I don't want to pick any out, but this has been a problem before in the sense of what is a good distributor. And part of the art of getting a good distributor is being really clear on what you expect. Distributors are obviously happier the more products they can sell, because then the odds of their selling somebody is greater the more things they have in inventory. But they sometimes tend to gravitate toward the things that have higher margins, have higher volume. So you have to think really carefully about how you incentivize them. And then you have to be really, really, you have to set some criteria about what is working and what isn't. And when you find a distributor isn't actually, able to move your product, you need to stop and go somewhere else. And no one ever says, gee, I wish I had waited a little longer to cut off this distributor. People are always saying, I wish I had thought about this sooner and set the criteria sooner. And they're obviously, and I hate to sound cynical here, they're very aggressive in the beginning because they want your business and they hope you're going to sell. But if you're not, it's up to you to cut them off. They won't come to you and say, gee, this is not working for me. That's my only advice.
Alex Inman has a question. Alex Inman, you have a comment?
Yeah, and I'm thinking, and I'm looking at the website right now, but I'm thinking about online and growing online as an interim step. I've purchased from 1821 Bitters down in Atlanta. I've got family down there, and I'm sure you're familiar with them.
Yes.
Their online presence is, in my opinion, pretty impressive, and I'm sure there are others in the space. That, to me, I look at them saying, "Wait a minute, they've kind of built it out online here," and I have no idea about their distributor, no distributor, or how their other channels. But talk to me about online strategy. Yes, no, maybe. Where could it go for you?
Yeah, so we do spend time on building our online presence. My main way of pushing people towards our website is using social media. So that's been a huge thing for us. We also use that for consumer education. We spend a lot of time on like our Instagram, offering up drink recipes and things like that, and then trying to push people to the website that way. Like, if you want to make this drink, then this is where you purchase this product. And then we do run specials on our website. The website does decently well for the age of company, I think. I would say obviously right now it's doing a lot better than it did before.
Thank you. I just wonder if there's, especially right now, if there's the potential to even build it out even more. And I realize that doesn't begin to answer the distributorship question, but I don't know.
No, so I think what you're saying is spend some money on the website and try to grow the traffic that way instead of the going with the distributor quite yet.
Well, and I also wonder just how far store by store is going to get you, right? I mean, I mean, it's great that you build out the list here, and I'm sure it will continue to grow. But and the bartender word of mouth thing, I realize is so huge. But then you're just limited to the people who care enough about what's in their drink to ask the bartender. So I don't know. I just think about online being a potential next step or a possible future step to continue to focus on.
Okay.
Alex, one of the things Megan had said when we spoke on the phone was the limitation of just her capacity and her team's capacity. If she focuses just on local, like eventually she pretty much has to knock on all the restaurants' doors to see if they need a reorder, and that's obviously going to limit, expansion pretty significantly. So the online thing could really be a good way.
This is Philip again. There are a couple of people you should probably talk to in town who don't have competitive products but have been dealing with distributors. There's a group called Pure Hebe that makes hibiscus-based, I think, drinks. And I know they've gone through several distributors trying to figure out how to do this. Mad Hatter Foods, I'm not sure who they're using right now. But they're kind of, again, not a shrub, not something like what you have. If I think about it longer, I'll probably think of some other food companies. But Pure Hebe, they're very nice. I'm happy to put you in touch, or Tracy can. And I know they've struggled with this distributor issue and would have some wisdom about how to manage a distributor.
So the other one that came to mind, Philip, was Peg Salt, which is Cass Cannon.
Yes.
And I think she still does all the distribution herself, but she may have moved on and using somebody else. So she'd be a great person for you to connect with as well. If she's doing it herself, her own distribution, that may be something that you partner with her on. She's got a seasoned salt that's really amazing. And we have Steve Lieberman with his hand raised. Why don't we jump over to Steve?
Yeah. So Megan, one of the questions is, what are your goals for a distributor?
Hey, Steve, we can't hear you very well.
Hold on.
He asked what your goals for a distributor are, but yeah, it was pretty quiet, Steve.
Okay. I'll get closer to the mic. Yeah. So the big question, Megan, is what are the goals for the distributor, and what are you looking for from a distributor at this point?
So my hope from a distributor would be access to stores outside of Charlottesville. Like Hope said, and I mean, this is pretty easy to assume, it can take a lot of time and man hours on my part to get anywhere outside of Charlottesville and actually spend the time on meeting with those people. And so trying to get into those small stores. But I think a good point that's been made is to make sure that I set the expectation of what kind of stores we would want to get into.
Yeah, so coming up with almost a business plan on how you're going to work with a distributor. Distributors are funny. I think Philip or somebody alluded to they love to sell the stuff that's high volume and high margins, and what's easy, because they're basically sales reps. So it's an independent sales rep out there selling for you, and they have to be excited about the product. And I've found in the past working through distributors, especially if you're a one product company, because it's not like they can go in and sell multiple product lines for your company. There has to be good incentive and reasons why they want to do it and create excitement. And I've also found that finding a distributor that you can work strategically with, where you can do marketing and help promote the product through them, and utilizing their sales reps to be your feet on the ground and being really aggressive with the whole marketing plan with things. And Alex actually alluded to something really, really big with a product like yours, creating pull marketing as far as getting people wanting your product, and then they'll go buy it through the distributor or that sort of thing. But creating the online presence and really the online marketing plan could be really big for you. It's just a matter of what your cost structure is, and the shipping prices a lot of the time is what you get into, I've found, with marketing online. So, but I think creating excitement through online can be really big, and the coming up with a plan and how you're going to work with the distributor and getting one that a lot of the time you can work strategically with them on doing things.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone who participated. And just to let you know that I'm going to encourage Megan and also Chad later to download the chat history. And so if you have any more advice, direction for her, just throw it in chat, and she'll be able to derive that with the right word later. And also I'm going to put Megan's email address up as well, so you can have direct communication, email her with any additional ideas. So thank you so much, Megan.
Thank you.
Yep. So to transition over into our Crash and Learn speaker, I am very excited to introduce Chad Rogers. A little bit about him as he's sitting on his cozy porch right now is that Chad actually is a UVA grad, so was in this lovely town years ago through the comm school, and from there went to the Haas School of Business at Berkeley, and so ended up over on the West Coast. He was an investment banker in M&A, had 20 years of experience in medical device technology, early stage management, venture capital, etc., to eventually come to a point where he started his own company called Type Zero back in 2013, and working with a lot of different startups, kind of leading his experience up until then, and then actually successfully led this company through an acquisition back in 2018. He is still with the company, helping them now really properly utilize this technology. It's a diabetes technology company, and he may touch on that a little bit, but he was nominated as a speaker for this and was told to me that he had many near-death experiences. So I love this portion of the day because, again, just to hear those stories. So I just want to give the floor to Chad here in Charlottesville. I know, married, couple kids, 2 kids, right? But you have the floor.
Well, thank you. Well, first of all, I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to talk with all you all. I know it's a little early in the morning, and it's good to do this virtually. So I apologize if it's loud here. I said my kids have taken over my office for their homeschooling. So this is where I've got sent to, out on the porch. When Hope and I were talking about, kind of my background and my experiences, she asked, if I would be willing to kind of tell a little bit my journey and how I got to where I am, and then, a little bit about, I guess, maybe lessons learned or my opinions. And anyone who knows me knows that I have a very strong opinion just about everything. So, they are opinions. So, they're mine. So, they're not always right. But as Hope alluded to, my background, I was at UVA, at comm school, and like many people, sort of didn't know what you're supposed to do post-college, and followed the route into investment banking. I worked for a company called Harris Williams, which at the time was effectively a startup. I was really the first analyst class there. And so, like any good thing, I guess I wandered in the startup community long before I knew I was going to do that. Did that for a little bit, and then fled to Silicon Valley because everyone was getting rich. Why wasn't I? Wouldn't it be easy? It's a great story. Just go do it. So picked up and went to the Valley, and lo and behold, wandered right into just, everything that the stories are. I joined a company that we went public. We rose and fell. I mean, we were a $9 billion market cap overnight. Then we were nothing. Our stock went from $252 a share to 0 or to 1. And then, I just assumed that's what happens. And then, you go on and do something next. One of the things that I think that I want to tell everyone in my experience is that, my path and for many people, it's circuitous, right? You don't really know how you get to these experiences and how they show up. I regaled a story to Hope early that, you always think you're smart and you can see what's coming in front. But one of the first things when I went to the Valley, I was offered an opportunity to join a company called Google. and run their finance department. And I thought it was the dumbest idea I've ever heard of. And I was indignant. And I even called back the recruiter and was like, I don't understand this. I don't know why we need this. I don't want to be involved in this. And I think I would have been like employee 11 or 12, but I was indignant that I was right. Turns out I was a little bit wrong. But so Intertrust kind of rose and fall. Ultimately, the company was sold for about $550 million, which would have been a great thing to stick around for, but I didn't. I went on and started another company with some friends in the interactive television space, and 9/11 showed around, and we were in the midst of a fundraising, and that put some dampers on our hopes, and we ended up selling the company to a company called Open TV. And so that was sort of a quick rise and fall. And then I had a little bit of what people call imposter syndrome, and I kind of felt like I wasn't technical enough to be in the Valley, and that I was missing some core pieces about my understanding and some of the things I thought were necessary to be influential and important in that world. And so I decided, well, after doing some consulting and working with some other companies, I'd go back to business school and sort of return to, let's call it, the more traditional private equity investing world. And so I went back to business school at Berkeley and had a great time and learned a lot and met a lot of great people. Came out and immediately went back to the Valley and started and joined a company which was called Aleph at the time. It was a small company from the Department of Defense doing noise abstraction algorithms, which ultimately converted to a consumer product which was called Jawbone. And then Jawbone rose and fell mightily. We actually went bankrupt. A lot of people don't know this. And I ejected myself at the beginning of the bankruptcy, only for that company to turn around and be worth about $2.5 billion about 3 years later. Now, granted, it also then might be the single or second largest capital failure in the Valley behind Solyndra, ultimately. So again, that rose and fell very, very quickly, or over a series of time. But I left, joined a venture fund or a late stage private equity, late stage venture, early stage private equity, growth equity fund, and decided I would go back to basically the investing side of the world. Did that for a couple of years and realized that I was a very bad backseat driver. And so I started my own entity called Maywick Capital that was to invest in small companies, basically at the translational step. And my wife and I were going back and forth. She was in Boston and I was in San Francisco. And we realized that was not the smartest of all things, and came back to this part of the world and got involved with UVA. And lo and behold, I was making an intention to try to get closer to the medical side of the world, both through just sheer interest and wanting to do something that I thought was more meaningful. And UVA helped me look at some assets, both for a company called Amped 3D, that I was the CEO for a while. And then a turnaround company here called Humasonics, which had been founded at UVA but needed to be improved. And so I spent some time there, both as a consultant and ultimately as their interim CEO, to help turn that around. But along the way, I was introduced to some really interesting things at UVA and the Center for Diabetes Technology, and began what is now Type 0. And that is a long story unto itself. But, for me, the reasons for finding all of this are probably, if I look back across my career, I recognize that, for many instances, I thought it was going to be easier. And so I would leave or eject a company, when the trouble showed up. And I think for me, as I've progressed in my career, I realized that, startups are tough. They're rough. They beat you up, but you have to be willing to kind of commit almost to go down with the ship at all times in order to get to the end goal. And so when we started Type 0, I convinced a friend of mine who was a former classmate of mine, and we are investment bankers together. He went and got a PhD in molecular biology. And so I brought him back to Charlottesville, and we started this company with a couple of the people from UVA. And it was supposed to be a very quick and exciting and easy layup because we'd done a lot of diligence, and 6 years later, we ended up with a good outcome, but it took a long time to get there. So as I start to think about, lessons I want to give to people, or my opinions about what's important and what's not, is, you know, the first thing in all of this is never get too high and never get too low. And you know, as I look across what has happened inside of TypeZero, you know, we were building a company, and when we started, some of the core technology had been wildly lauded, and there were many large companies interested in it at UVA, which is part of the reason that we gravitated towards it and picked it up. Like anything, you know, you think you have something that is mature or has progressed over, you know, they'd been working on it for more than a decade. And when we got it, you know, to argue, it was probably 10% of the way there. You know, everyone thought it was 90% of the way there, and it really was just the beginning. But as we got involved, you know, companies like Sanofi or Eli Lilly or Novo Nordisk would show up and tell us, you know, we had the greatest thing and they wanted to be a part of us, and we would get so ecstatic, and we would, you know, tell ourselves how smart we were and how easy this was going to be. And lo and behold, for one reason or another, you would, you know, the deal wouldn't come forward, or the partnership wouldn't work, or the investment wouldn't work. And so you would find yourself falling from this super high to a super low. And that continues all the time. I think it was Steve Jobs said that, you know, there's something in startups called the idiot hero index, and you constantly ride that wave, where one day you think you're the smartest and the next day you can't imagine how you've made such bad decisions. So for us, that was very much the case. I mean, at TypeZero, at one point, we were approached by a large pharmaceutical company out of Europe. They offered us, you know, a massive, basically investment and acquisition, which was wildly above what we would have sold the entire company for. And we signed it, and they agreed, and we went all the way to a second board meeting. And at the day of the second board meeting, they left and never called back. And we never found out what happened for about a year. And literally it was, you know, we had phone calls, and, you know, the CEO of their company called us and took pictures and said, you know, welcome to the family. I mean, we were married. It was done, and our team was set to go. And we had set up a huge offsite where we were going to spend a bunch of time with our team, sort of reorienting and spending some money. And lo and behold, it was just over. And I remember going to this offsite with our team and just being like, well, guys, first of all, the bar's open. I don't know if we have a company. But, you know, we spent 3 days just sort of as companies staring at each other, being like, how do we come out from here? And I think that leads me to one of the other, my biggest points is, look, when you do this, you have to love it. You know, starting a company or being an entrepreneur isn't about exits. It's not about making money. Most of them don't. Most of them fail. It's about having something that you can't get away from, and something that you can't go to sleep because you need to solve. And if it's not that, when these times come, you'll exit, and you'll want to leave. You'll want to forget it. And, you know, one of the things that we struggled with very much so, and, you know, I think we did wrong at times, was you've got to build your business. You have to build it to be sustainable, and not for an exit, not for a sale, but because that's the goal of what you decided to do. And for us, you know, we chased a lot of opportunities because they're very shiny. But when they didn't happen, you often were left with a void inside of your sustainable strategy. And, you know, lo and behold, it worked out for us. You know, we were acquired by Dexcom in 2018. And they were one of our partners all along. So they weren't the high flyers. They weren't the huge pharma company, but they were with us from the beginning. And, you know, I would say that we really weren't looking at them as an acquirer for us, but, you know, it made sense all the way along. And so I think one of the other, again, Hope and I had a conversation early on about this, which is, you know, when you're starting this and when you're putting together, one of the hardest things is how do you make sure that your team and your co-founders are all aligned? And in the translational technology field, especially coming out of universities, it's a big problem. And I think one of the hardest things is how do you align your team in a way that supports everyone? And I think one of the things we didn't do very well was we had active and passive founders. You know, obviously some of this technology had come from the university, And bringing founders into the company who are not there on a day-to-day basis when times get tough becomes difficult. It adds an undue amount of strain because there's those of you who are quote unquote in the fight and, you know, rising and falling on a daily basis. And there are others who, while may have an equity interest or a technology interest, are actually protected entirely from what's called the negative consequences of what may occur. And as you can imagine, that creates strife. And so I think for me, and again, it's a lesson I've told a lot of people, I didn't follow it myself, was to, you know, make sure that you have your alignment and know that everyone's all in to the extent that they can be. And if they're not all in, make sure that that has been reflected from the outset, because it's one of those things that, like anything, resentment will breed when things are not tough. And if you haven't set it up equitable at the beginning, you know, it's only when the bad times come that you start to, that stuff comes out. I think the last thing, and, you know, everyone wants to talk about fundraising and, you know, valuation and all of this. And we get very myopic when you start getting into capital raising and, you know, what's the value of this business and, you know, what am I going to get? I don't want to say that it's not important, because it is important, right? I mean, there's no question that figuring out, you know, what you're worth and what people view you are and how much of the company you keep are all very, very important things. But I also know that it is the single, it doesn't help you succeed, right? It won't be the limiter on whether or not your business rises or falls or succeeds in the end. So sometimes, I mean, I know we actually turned down an investment by a large pharma company, and it was all over valuation. And, you know, it becomes personal and you get indignant and you start to think, well, we're worth more than that. And, you know, I had a lawyer of mine said, well, if this doesn't go through, you might be worth nothing. And, you know, and that's a very hard thing to think, because, you know, you don't want to view your world as something that is binary and can't exist, because that's what startups can do. So I think as I look back on my experiences, that is something that I've tried to convince people that, yes, it's important to make sure you get what you can get. But at the same time, if you know that you're going to succeed and you need capital to do it, don't fight over $1 million or $2 million worth of value, because that's not going to change your outcome. What else, Hope? What else could I tell?
No, this is great. I had written down some questions, and I think that you hit on them. One of them was, when you started Type Zero, did you plan to position it for acquisition from the beginning? Because one of your points was that you have to love it and you have to be invested in it, but you also entertained a lot of different acquisition opportunities. So was that your plan from the jump or not?
No, it wasn't our plan. I would say that, you know, we started with like everyone, we started with a very ambitious goal. I mean, Type Zero is known, outwardly people know us as someone who built what we call artificial pancreas algorithms, which are really, is an overcomplicated way of saying we build thermostats that sit between two types of medical devices utilized in diabetes, right? We collect information off a continuous blood glucose monitor, and we use it to autonomously dose drugs, insulin in particular. That is what we're known for. The company itself is we call it sort of a synthetic biology company. We do a lot of work around the simulation of large-scale physiological systems in a way that we can build other technology. So when we began the company, we had this very broad viewpoint of how we could bring this core technology and apply it in all these different ways. And we were going to instantiate point solutions and applications, and we were going to revolutionize the diabetes field. And, you know, that's what we were going to do. Lo and behold, it's a great story, and we slam right into the first problems in day one. And you start rationalizing yourself and whittling down your viewpoint to be practical or to move forward. And so we never wanted to sell the business. That was not our goal. I would be lying if I said, you know, when companies like Sophie or Lilly or Novo Nordisk show up, where they would say, hey, we're going to be swinging through Charlottesville. And I was like, well, that's a lie, because it's Charlottesville. So you're coming to see me or coming to see us. That made us really excited. And I would say we were drawn like moths, right? I mean, to the light. And we would be like, oh, you know, wow, we're going to get taken out early. So it wasn't our intention at all. We wanted to build this broader, big vision. But when times get hard, you start to drift and drift and drift, and you get, it's like the song of the sirens, right? And as you get pulled towards them, if it doesn't occur, that's when you crash into the rocks. And so I would love to tell you that we were intelligent and we kept on path and we kept with our vision. But no, every time it would show up, we would follow it. And if it went away, we would find ourselves like, now what do we do? And so that's why I think I try to tell people, like, don't lose sight, because, these things, they happen and they disappear. And when they disappear, you can be very remorseful, and it took toll on our team. I mean, some of our team members would be like, don't tell me anymore. I don't want to know. Like, I don't want to know, because if I get my expectations that we're going to exit, we're going to be part of this, that, and the other, and then you tell me it doesn't, like, I can't handle this. So, yeah. But, yeah.
It is like dating, like, don't introduce them to the kids till it's much further along. Well, I thank you very, very much, Chad. I know that there are some people with questions. I wanted to open up the floor to questions. If we can do the hand raise thing.
David has his hand raised. He's ready to roll.
And sounds good. David, you go first.
Oh, cool. Thanks. Chad, you mentioned a couple times about leaving a company. I think you called it ejecting.
Yeah.
So I had a question of, founders, I'm a patent attorney, so I'm on I work with founders a lot, and founders are committed to their companies. And the big question I have is, how do you know when it's time to say, you know what, it's not going to work? How do you know it's time to eject?
It's honestly, it's something that I've struggled with. And, if I want to tell the longer version of my story, I think I was willing to make a determination about the true success of something or its capabilities early on in my career much faster. And I'd say, no. Like, we crashed this on the rocks, and we need, you better get off. If you don't get off, you're going down with the ship. And, my friends love to joke that I dodged a lot of wealth early on in my career. And by doing that, when I started Type Zero, and I would say that I made a statement to myself, which I need to follow this one all the way through. Wherever it goes, if it goes down, I'm going to go down with it. So for me to tell you that I figured out what's the right answer, well, this one happened to work really, really well. It could have easily gone against me. I think it's not so much for a founder to determine when the idea is dead. I think it's, everyone loves to tell you that as a founder, you're going to get a lot of advice, and that advice, listen to the advice. But the truth is, the mix is between listening to the advice and ignoring the advice, right? You've created something new and a reason that you believe people haven't seen the opportunity that you see. So by very nature, in many instances, you are contrarian to what everyone's opinion is about the problem and the solution set, because if so, it would have already existed. Your question about when you can say, oh, wow, I am wrong. Like, they were right, I was wrong. This was a bad idea. I wish I could say there's an easy answer. There isn't. I mean, I was, again, Hope and I were talking, people have come to me many times recently and said, I have this idea. And I'm like, guys, I think you can raise money on that idea. I think you can move forward on that idea, but I think you can never build a business on that idea. And so you can have the opportunity to go through part of the startup process, but to be very clear, at the end of the day, this is a learning experience, probably better than anyone else. Now, that all being said, how do I know that I'm right? And, I can't remember if it's either Benchmark or someone else, they have their anti-portfolio, and it's my favorite thing in the world. And it is on their site, they list all these companies that they passed on and their reason for doing so. And the companies are like Apple and Cisco and Google and Airbnb, and they say very clearly, this is why this was a dumb idea. And it's one of my favorite things, because we don't know what we don't know. And so, how do you know when to get off? I don't know. Honestly, for me, it's funny, myself and my co-founder, Jeff Keller, who's now the Chief Innovation Officer at UVA, when we started this company, about 2 years in, Jeff looks at me one day and he goes, I can't do this anymore. He was like, I just can't, and for me, I was like, whoa, what do you mean? You can't leave. Like, we're in the fight. And he's just like, yeah, I can't do this anymore. This is killing me. Right. And so I think it becomes a very personal question of how far down that rat hole you want to go. Now, you have to listen to everyone else. I mean, you can't be so myopic that you can't hear what people are telling you. But that's a funny balance, because that's often what you hear at the very get-go from every single person, which is, here's all the reasons this doesn't work. And yeah, so I didn't give you a very good answer. I think it's probably like, it depends for each person how far they want to go.
I think that was a great answer. Thank you.
Hope you're muted.
Oops. All right. So who else has a question for Chad? We can take another one or two. Otherwise, I have one.
John Martin.
Yep. Hi, John.
Hi. Hey, Chad. Thanks so much for sharing. This is great. Curious, if you're a young entrepreneur starting out today, knowing what you know, what space do you think is the most exciting and why?
Well, I have become very enamored with the health tech space. I think it's one of the hardest spaces, no question about it. The nature of regulated products is difficult and hard. I think it is changing in a way that is becoming easier. So I'm still very bullish on what we can do here, largely because I hate to say it, if this epidemic hasn't shown us some of the flaws in our system, that I think for a long time there's been a lot of tech being pushed at the healthcare system, and for all the myriad of reasons that exist, from payers to the antiquated systems, etc. There's been a lot of headwind in order to do that. I think this will give people an opportunity to maybe change some of that from a regulatory perspective, but also from the willingness to choose new models, which health has not been willing to do. So for me personally, I see a lot of benefit in there, because I think there's both investment that's going to come. There's a slightly more target-rich environment because people are going to be willing to look at things. But also, I think the regulatory agencies are starting to figure out. We've been in an environment where software as a medical device has been kind of an unknown, and that's starting to get clearer. So for me, I see a lot of benefit there. Beyond that, I think that someone was asking me the other day, and I said, this is so trite, but I think the way in which the world is going to operate in remote systems, I mean, it's no shock, are really going to proliferate. And I'll give you an example. So the company that acquired us, Dexcom, we're now a $30 billion company. Strangely, I don't know how that happened, but it's we have about 8,000 employees. I would say they're conservative by their very nature. We're a hardware medical device manufacturer. It's funny, I was talking with the CEO and the COO the other day, and they said, it's weird, this whole remote environment suddenly has changed the way we're operating. Our internal salespeople are way up. Our customer service scores are higher than they've ever been. They were like, hey, there's something to this remote working thing. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, really? You guys are just coming around to the concept that, the physical cube world is kind of going to come down. But it dawned on me that, that is happening so many places across the world right now that, again, it's very temporal. So that's not really a space. I think that's a hot button. But I think people sort of refactoring how all of this is going to work, and not just in the years, the year to come, but in the next 10 years, how does this change? So I think those are, whether it be collaboration or the way for people to do things remotely is going to explode in a way that it's never had before. Similar to what I said about healthcare. I think the environment has changed, and the people who previously wouldn't touch it or said, no, that's not how we work, I've now forced to see a whole different world.
Awesome. Nathan, you have a question?
Yeah. So if you could do it all over again, what would you do differently besides taking the job at Google?
there's lots. I wouldn't say that. I wish I could tell you there was one thing. There are many, many things that I would do differently. You know, I would say in the type 0 world, you know, maybe I can focus there. Let me back up. So there's two things. One is, you know, everyone wants to say that growing up is about realizing no one knows what they're talking about, right? That the world is full of people sort of pitching their particular viewpoint, and you think there are experts, and slowly you start to realize that most people are experts in only a very small thing, and everything else is sort of confidence and the ability to think. And it took me a long time, I think, in the Valley, in my first, you know, for lack of a better word, decade, to realize that when you're in a new environment, everyone is making it up, right? Everyone is trying to see what sticks, and everyone goes. And for me, I really come from at least maybe an educational background, otherwise, where I'm like, no. There are experts. There are those who know and those who don't know. And I was in one of those that I don't know. So I think if I had more quickly realized that in the fast-paced new technology world, we're all trying to figure it out, right? We're all trying to make it stick. And that was very hard for me. I think it took me a long time to realize that, you know, the fake it till you make it world is in fact how pretty much everything comes together. That doesn't mean that these companies are not built on interesting tech stacks or inventions. It's just that they don't know how it's all going to go together. And that only gets figured out as the ship is being built while it's being sailed. So that was the first, I would say. My second is, you know, I don't want to say we made a mistake, but we made a pretty big mistake early on in Type 0 in the way in which we moved the technology away from the university. In terms of how we doled out or we gave incentives to some of our founders. And I would say for me personally and for my team and for others, it created a bunch of extra headaches. You know, I'm now an entrepreneur in residence with UVA at LVG as well. And, you know, I think one of the things I harp on with Michael Stradiff at the center is like making sure that you have all the incentives aligned in a very real way, because that's a good way to sync a piece of technology that you guys think is promising if you have some weird conflict. And so I would have made some changes there that were ultimately made along the way, but it was just, we had set it up for some rough times. And I think I'm much more salient about some of that conflict and like, let's have the conflict up front. And if we can't solve it at the beginning, well, then maybe it's not worth the process to move forward. So, you know, those are two things, but, you know, again, yeah, maybe the Google choice, that would probably have been a good one. That would have been you know, maybe I'd be on an island right now versus just in Central Virginia. Don't get me wrong, I like Central Virginia, but, you know, island would be nice too.
Wow. Thank you so much, Chad, for sharing your story and all the things you learned. So we are very appreciative. We missed the applauding in this context, but I took some great notes and just through the things you learned the hard way. I appreciate it. So just what the rest of the day is going to look like is we are going to shift into announcements. We have a couple up from our hosts. We'll start with them, and then the rest of you guys can think about if you have any upcoming events or if you're hiring. Those are the two types of announcements that we feature, upcoming events and hiring. But I'm going to pick a couple of people first. Let's start with Carolina with the Community Investment Collaborative. Carolina, you can have the floor first.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Chad. That was such a great story. And thank you, Megan, for sharing about your business too. Yeah, my name is Carolina, and I want to announce that the Business Recovery Fund. This is for businesses in Charlottesville and Albemarle. And these are going to be loans given by Albemarle and Charlottesville City to any business with an existing business license for 2020 and that they also had a license in 2019. The loan will be up to $10,000, and the interest on the loan is 1%, and this is in order to help the businesses restart after all of this COVID-19 situation. I'm happy to give more details about it, but I also want to point out I'm gonna attach here the website so you can look at the details. and you have to fill out a form. It's super simple, the form, and after that you will be invited to the actual application. And the applications will be handled by the CIC staff. So that's why I'm announcing this. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any, but I did leave the website here on the comments if you want to look at that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I want to say one thing before I go to my next speaker. For those of you guys that still had questions for Chad or you had feedback for Megan, after the announcements, we're actually going to go into individual breakout rooms. Megan is going to be in one, Chad's going to be another, and then this next person giving announcements is going to be in the third. And we'll explain that at the end here. But Diane, you're next with the SBDC, the Small Business Development Center. I'll let you go ahead and share announcements.
Thank you. The Small Business Development Center has been run ragged the last few weeks, as you can well imagine, as we've met with a number of people to go over the EIDL loans and the payroll protection plan. And now we are expecting to be working with those who are applying for the federal PUA that's just been released. Greg McFittich is on this line with me, and so is Linda Turbity. And now Linda has been working, we've all given suggestions, but Linda has been working very hard to put together a bunch of new training modules that can be what we call down and dirty, 15 to 20 minutes long, on some topics that we think small business can use as they reevaluate where they are now and want to get jump started when the quarantine is lifted. So a big term around our office right now is, what can we do to help people be resilient? And I'd like to, SBDC does a great job at helping people start, manage, and grow their businesses. And one of the things is that we have a ton of actual marketing, real research, timely research that can help you understand the market you're getting into and make good decisions up front. So I would encourage you, if you need that kind of resource, that you do contact us. And I really enjoyed what Mr. Rogers said. I've worked with people, with businesses for many, many years, probably more than some of you all are alive. And one of the things I have always noted is the true entrepreneur will jump off the diving board even when there's no water, over and over again. And in the end, they learn humility, they learn how to hold on. And you can't create that, you nurture it. So you really have to, when you're going to business, you really have to know what your risk tolerance is. You can be a good business person if you have some risk tolerance, but you better have a lot of risk tolerance if you're going to bet the farm on your business. So it's good to see all of you here this morning. Excited to keep up with what's going on in the world of loans and FPUA at centralvirginiasbdc.org. Thank you.
Yep. And Diane and Greg are going to be in one of these breakout rooms talking specifically about answering questions around the CARES Act and some of the recovery loans. Next, I would like to invite David Tuvey with the iLab to share.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Great.
Yep.
Chad, thank you. Megan, thank you. I'm sitting outside too, and I have to be honest, it's kind of cold. I had to put a little extra helper coat on. We're always happy to host all of you, Sandra, Jason, myself, plus everybody else at the Batten Institute. It's intriguing to now do this not at the iLab, but at the iLab, where you'll all be headed shortly in different rooms. So hopefully the conversations with or without caffeine will go most excellently. We have one upcoming conversation with Brett Brohl from Techstars on the future of food and ag tech. If people are interested in food tech, ag tech as a general category, I entered a short little link in the chat. Feel free to join us. That's on Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the Zoomiverse. If you follow that link, you'll be able to RSVP. Our summer program, now called Venture Lab, will start primarily in the summer with some programming now. Jason can provide those of you with more information about that. And then in June, we'll have some deadlines upcoming for Catalyst, the accelerator program, more specifically focused upon software, hardware, biotech, biomed, and other sorts of companies. I'm happy to see that MSEs is having a wonderful morning home. And a wonderful farewell to family and friends. We hope all of you are just doing well, your family, your friends, and everyone else are well. If you have any questions or need any help with some other topics or just thinking through the ventures you're operating, feel free to reach out. I'm just david@virginia.edu.
It's an amazing email address, by the way. So thank you so much, David. Appreciate everything that the Batten Institute and you all have done for us. We've always been in their space. If this is your first time, we've always gotten to utilize the iLab, and we're in the Zoomiverse. I really like that, by the way, now, and we will see where that goes as far as our home on the other side of this.
I did trademark it. Zoomiverse is now Circle R. No, just kidding.
Okay, well, I won't use it again, but I did. You know, after 3 times you own it, though. So if I do it 2 more times. Anyway, next, I would like to invite Tracy on behalf of the Charlottesville Business Innovation Council, CBIC.
Great. Thank you. So I'm Tracy Green, Executive Director for the Charlottesville Business Innovation Council, and I just want to make a few announcements. One is CBIC has been known for getting people in the same room together, connecting them in person via events a lot, and also via news. We now have an online platform that we soft launched it and on an escalated time frame to try to get some really time sensitive information out there, such as the CARES Act webinar that we did with the Central Virginia SBDC and other CARES Act related and SBA loan related news, and anything else around COVID-19 and information to keep businesses open and resilient and putting resources out there. But CBIC Connect is a community engine. It is found at community.cvillinnovation.org. And I'm posting that out there. Or is it .org or .com? I think it's .org. Our website is cvillinnovation.org. And it's there for you guys. It's a 24/7. Go there, post your insights, go there, post your questions. It's to enable this kind of community virtually. So it's going to feel a little bit like Facebook. We have topics and we have groups, and we want you to go there and post your questions and your information, use it as a resource. CBIC still will be putting out its regular newsletter as we always do. If you're not already in our email list, receiving those communications, please be sure to go to cvillinnovation.org and sign up for our news. We push out relevant information to the tech and startup and innovation-based ecosystem here locally. Also, on that note, we do have a new series that we had launched right before the pandemic struck called CBIC for the Founders. It's an educational series designed specifically for either current founders or aspiring founders. And we're walking founders through the journey of their startup. We have subject matter experts that are coming on and talking about various subjects that are relevant to founders. The next session is May 12th. We are still opening registration and we're taking it to the Zoomiverse. So feel free to go to cvillinnovation.org and sign up. It's also an Eventbrite. You can find it just by going to Eventbrite directly if you wanted to. Those are my announcements, Hope.
Thank you. And I did confirm that web address is .org. Anyone can download the chat at the end if you want some of these links. And Dave just put a link in there, Carolina. There's a lot of links in there. Now we will open the floor for announcements and hiring. And I saw Craig Honig had his hand raised, so we can start with him. You can do the hand raise thing, or if it's silent, you can speak up and kind of take the mic. So, Craig.
Thanks, Hope. So April 29th, I'm going to put a link in an announcement on the chat. My esteemed colleague David Deaton and I are going to present a sales seminar on called Selling in Uncharted Waters, how to kind of sell in this environment. April 29th, online from 5 to 6. And the interesting thing about it is that, first of all, let me mention that all the proceeds are going to go to Loaves and Fish's food pantry. The interesting thing about it is neither of us are sales trainers. We're market researchers, and what we're going to bring to the table is to teach some skills about how to gain trust, rapport, and navigate environments that are new and uncertain. Because this is what we do all the time as field researchers. So we thought that that would be very interesting. We're also having sold our entire lives for our own companies and ideas and just existing in the world, really. But in any event, so it should be really interesting. And so I invite you all to come sign up. I put a link in there. And we look forward to it. April 29th, 5 to 6, online.
Awesome. All right. Who else is hiring or upcoming events? I know people are hiring.
This is Chad. I just want to say we'll one of the things that we are doing after Dexcom acquired us, we're moving into a new space at the Dairy Building, but we're supposed to be hiring about 20 to 25 people over the next 2 years, largely in the software side of the world. We'll be hiring some project management and some scientists as well. So we'll be posting a lot of things coming out of Dexcom.com, no longer type0.com, but we'll be growing a lot. So keep your eye out, and if you know people are starting to look, especially on the software end of the world, we'll be growing.
Awesome. I'm looking for some PHP developers for a company. That's kind of random, but and I'm kind of always looking for stuff. It just depends on the day. All right, let's do this. If I don't see another hand raised, last call, hiring announcements, and if not, raise your hand because I'm going to keep talking. What we're going to do is I'm going to throw Chad's information up in here because I realized I didn't do that yet. And then also I'm going to put my email address because as you transition into breakout rooms, I would love feedback on what this experience was like for you. And I'm always open to speaker recommendations. However, don't be offended if I don't select them. We're pretty specific in who we're looking for, but we're looking for that on the crash and learn side, that 15 to 20 year kind of seasoned entrepreneur, as well as on the early stage, pretty early. So, but always open to chat and get the word out about these events. They are monthly. So it is always the third Tuesday of the month. It will continue to be in the virtual world, very likely this way. So the same entry point, the CBIC Kiko chat link will link into this Zoom. Here's the reason. After this, I'm about to break out. You will go back to the original link that you entered. The browser should probably still be open on your computer of where you originally entered to enter the Zoom. That is actually, if you scroll down, there's breakout rooms. You can literally enter one and it will take you out of this Zoom and you will re-enter a new Zoom. So each breakout room has its own Zoom associated with it. And Chad, let's see, Megan will be in the maker space. So you can go join Megan if you have any more tips for her, questions. Chad will be in the idea well. And Diane and Greg with the SBDC will be over in the cafe. And these are all mirroring the iLab, but they will be in the cafe to talk about the CARES Act and any questions you have related to that lending in the space. And then we also opened up a general one for networking in the garden. There's a general garden, or you can stay right here. This is also going to be open. So we're going to leave all these rooms open until 10 o'clock, and you can come and go as you please. And Zoom itself has breakout rooms, but it doesn't have the capability for you to come and go as you please from room to room, hence using Kiko. So if you want to know why Kiko, that's why. It's allowing you to freely move around. So we hope that you enjoy that experience. My email address is ce2@cvilleinnovation.org. Yes. I think, yeah, .org. But I'll put it up in here. And it is .org.
It's .org, yeah.
Okay. And with that, you all have a lovely day. They'll all head over to the rooms, and then we'll see you there. Tracy, anything else?
Yeah, I hope I just want to mention one more thing. If people scroll down, you can see these various rooms. Give me head noddings if you're understanding what we're saying. Scrolling down, you'll see that we're all in this main meeting room. You can jump over to the makerspace by hitting enter. It's going to close this main Zoom and open another Zoom. You just follow the instructions to do that. And then the other thing I want to mention is if you keep on scrolling, if you want to create your own topic, we have a couple of gardens down there, so you can actually click on it, and then you'll see a little section that says, you know, edit, and you can edit the title. So you can name it whatever you want to name it, and if somebody wants to join you to talk about that topic, they're going to pop in there. We're probably going to lose some people here, but those people who remain, if you want to jump into one of these gardens, I think we're ready for you to do that. Right, Hope?
We are. And if you need this, their contact, Chad's email is rogers@typezero.com, by the way. I'm typing it in here. But we'll see you guys over there.
Hey, Tracy, Tracy and Hope. Just
and
wanted to
also, go ahead. Yep.
I was just going to say thank you guys for taking this virtual and kind of pivoting. This is probably the coolest setup for an online video chat I've had. So awesome job. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Stephen. It's good to see you. I know you used to come from Richmond to our event because you like our event so much. So it's really great to be able to keep you on your couch.
Virtual is nice. Stay a little bit of a trip.
Yeah.
It does.
Thanks for being with us, Stephen. All right, guys. I'm going to jump over into the makerspace. Bye.
Bye, guys.